Hello everyone, so I've decided to make some new content based around my gender transition and things like that, because I've looked on YouTube and there's hardly any content really surrounding the sort of pathways you have to go through for your medical transition for transgender teenagers. So I thought I'd like to make like a video about it because I saw a few, but I'm hoping this will be quite helpful for some people that are watching my videos. This video is going to explain sort of the starting point of a transition for a transgender person. So it's going to explain my sort of starting point. Just a little bit of a backstory. I came out in 2017, May, I think it was 14th of May 2017, which was quite a while ago now. And the first thing I did was, when me and my mum I rang up my doctor and asked for a referral to a gender specialist. He didn't really know about transgender people, so he kind of didn't really know what to do. But in the end, he sent a referral off, and this is to GIDS, so the NHS Tavistock and Portman Foundation Trust, which is called GIDS, that's what they call it. I was put on this list in the summer of 2017, and then I had to wait quite a while, I'd say about nearly a year. So just before my exams started, I went to London to the appointment. I got my appointment on the 10th of May, which was all good. So I went up there. I was actually really nervous because I didn't know what to expect. And I'd done a little bit of research myself into like testosterone and things like that, and I went there thinking that they would be able to give me that, but unfortunately they're not able to give you that, as I'll explain later on. My first appointment was basically me and my mum and my stepdad. We sat down in a room with two people, so there was the gender specialist, and then there was a second person who just was making notes about my life. It was very awkward. I went in and they were just like, so introduce yourself. Me and my mum found this a bit awkward because you thought they'd sort of ease you into it, so we sort of explained why I was there. They were quite nice, but it was a very emotional time for me, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I did cry a lot in my appointments. I don't know if that's the same for everyone, but I went into the appointment. They sort of asked, but the background story, I expressed the fact that I was scared of needles because I thought that would be important to share, but they really sort of explained what would happen, and it was basically the fact that they had to assess me. The appointment's only an hour, so we just sort of spoke for a bit. I didn't really say much in that entire appointment just because I was like really scared, but they sent me away with some questionnaires and things to fill out, which I did, and then sent back to them, which was just sort of like how to feel about your body, different experiences in like your work and things like that. And then I had my second appointment about a month after, so I made sure that I'd finished my exams, and I went there, and this time they made me talk on my own. So my mum left the room and I spoke on my own for like the whole time, and we basically just did like a sort of gender timeline thing, which was actually really helpful for me because I could pinpoint sort of when these feelings started happening, and for me they were as young as when I was about 2-3 years old, and there was no sort of argument about, oh, it's come out the blue. No, it hasn't. I've been like this for my entire life. That was really good, so they knew that they could talk to me alone, so my next appointment sort of focused on other things. The brief overview was they want to know your life story, and then they want to know sort of different life events to try and work out why you're like that. Then they talk a little bit about like your sexuality, like because that sort of links in with gender as well, which I was fine about. And they sort of talk about your sort of sexual relationships, which I knew was coming, so that was fine. One of the appointments I actually took my nan so that she could understand, and we actually spent the whole session doing sort of like a family tree guideline thing, so that they knew sort of what was happening with my family, because my family, like my mum and dad, are split up, so I've got a big family. Towards the end, really, about, I'm trying to think how many sessions I had. I feel like I might have had like 9-10 sessions at GIDS. I then ended up with a new psychologist gender specialist person who was a lot nicer and treated me more like an adult, because the one before really sort of babied me, even though I was like, how old was I? I was like nearly 16 at the time. Yes? Yeah, I was nearly 16 at the time. I'm now 18. And he sort of just understood things, and our sessions focused more on what my life will be like in the future, like whether I want to have kids and things like that. And they encourage you to look into egg storage if you do want kids. I did look into that, but it just wasn't for me. My last appointment was January. I went up there, we sort of discussed everything, and we sort of agreed to all like sum it all up and then say goodbye, because I was nearly 18. I didn't feel like I needed the service anymore, and that's basically where I'm at now. For me, GIDS was really good to talk about my feelings. It wasn't really there for medical stuff. It was more like just expressing how I was feeling with like gender dysphoria and things like that. I know it could be better for like younger people, but by the time I got to the stage where they'd let me have hormone blockers, there was no point. They said that they'd let me have them, but there really was no point. And the entire point of that service is really to get hormone blockers before you start puberty, so it's more for kids. Unfortunately, it isn't as easy anymore because there's lots of backlash in the media about things like this. So I know that one of my friends is struggling with it. Of people, obviously waiting times are horrible, they're horrendous. They're there for a reason as well though. And I know that kids in America, bang, like one appointment, they can start testosterone. It's not as easy as that in the UK. I've been trying to start testosterone for about 2-3 years, considering since I've come out. But they're not as lenient in the NHS or things like that, because they want to make sure it's right for you. For me, that is the correct pathway, and I did discuss that after my final session. I did say that I probably will be going privately for testosterone due to the extensive long waiting times. Obviously I know the NHS can't help that, but for me it's the right decision to go privately. I'm going to make a separate video about that, about my first appointment with Gender Care, where I'm going privately. But it's just sort of important to make sure you do have time to think about this, because it is a life-changing decision. And for me, it's the right one. I honestly, I cannot wait to start testosterone. I'm thinking maybe at the end of this year, considering I have waited about 3 years. But I'm just really happy to see where things go from here.